Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our session on traditional institutions, cultural organizations, and their role in shaping African philanthropy. It's not every day that I get to sit with two queens and a princess. So I am going to enjoy this session tremendously. I would like to introduce the panel to you. The bios are in your pack. Queen Thandi of Zululand, welcome. Queen Sylvia. First, let me say that Queen Sylvia sits on the board of the Africa Philanthropy Forum. So she's somebody I know extremely well, and I'm sure this earlier on this morning you listened to her keynote address, so you know that this is a subject matter that she's particularly passionate about. So Queen Sylvia, thank you very much for joining. And to my princess, Bolanle is my sister from Ekiti. So she comes from Ado Ekiti, I come from Ikole Ekiti, so we have a special relationship there. For those of you that don't know Nigeria very well, it's the only part of Nigeria, the only contiguous state in the southwest of Nigeria where we all speak the same language. So I thought the best place to start, and I thought it was particularly apt this morning, listening to Jane. I'd been thinking, how do you capture the continent? And her use of the word generosity. I think that in itself says it all. Generosity, because that is us. Whether we're looking at traditional institutions or cultural organizations across the African continent, the one common factor that we know about is that we are particularly very generous people. I guess in the old days and with tradition, we were not particularly structured about the way we did our generosity. But that didn't stop us from accepting people into our homes, didn't stop us from contributing every time somebody sent us a message of people in dire need and distress. Didn't stop us from paying more school fees than just our immediate family. The whole concept of the extended family is something that all of us in this room know about. The fact that growing up as a child, for a long time I didn't know who was my sibling and who was a cousin, because we all lived and ate and slept literally under the same roof. And it took me some time to understand what the differences were. And I think that in itself is the essence of African philanthropy. It is the essence of what we're all about. So, Jane, thank you very much for focusing on generosity. But I think that what's important for this afternoon is really to get the views of the panel around traditional institutions and their role, and how going forward they can shape giving, they can shape the conversation. I create a distinction between traditional institutions and cultural organizations. In most parts of Africa, they're pretty much the same, because within our ethnic groups, what is important is that the traditional institutions are the custodians of our culture. And I think when you also listen to Bolanle and the fact that what she's done with Terra culture is really to bring home the essence and the importance of culture. One of the things that years ago, and this is a side comment, but one that rings true for all of us, it was extremely difficult in my home to teach my children Hausa, which is my wife's language, and Yoruba, which is mine. And the only place we could send the children off to was Terra culture, because she ran language classes. And I think that's the essence of what Bolanle brings to the table, is really the fact that within this fast-moving society that we all live in, that we must remember that culture is important to all of us. I would kick off the conversation essentially by really asking Queen Sylvia, to talk about what the role she sees for traditional institutions and cultural organizations, and how she has worked to push the agenda of these institutions.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to say that referring to me as HRH the Queen is the easy way, or is the English way, but my title is Nnabareka, and you'll hear it a lot in my presentation. I became the Nnabareka when I got married to His Majesty, the Kabaka of Buganda, in 1999. And the word Okugereka is Nnabareka is actually derived from the word Okugereka, which literally means to prepare for providence. I established the Nnabareka Development Foundation in 2000, and it's the primary vehicle through which I carry out my philanthropy work. Its purpose is to promote and support children, women, and youth with provisions of health education, and economic empowerment. Over the last 7 years, we have registered achievements in support to education, that's access, quality, and infrastructure, support to health, particularly with grassroots advocacy campaigns on maternal health, child health, sexual reproductive health, and also the prevention of HIV/AIDS. Now, traditional institutions have been around for hundreds of years, and in the case of Buganda Kingdom, it has been around for over 700 years. Now, I think the big question is, what is the function of these old institutions? What are they doing? Well, in my opinion, these institutions have to adapt, and I think we have adapted to remain relevant to this day and age. We have to adapt to the changing times, but without losing the essence of Ubuntu or civility or humanness. So we use the positive aspects of culture to bring about social transformation in our communities. In the case of Buganda Kingdom, which is still very much grounded in its rich cultural and historical heritage, however, it's responsive to the needs and realities of the 21st century. And so you find that through the system, the Kabaka and the Kabaka through the Buganda system structures uses his influence and to bring about, to mobilize people for development. So he supports the advancement of education, empowering women, and so many other issues. We see that we have, was created, for example, the Kabaka Education Fund, which every year contributes to, gives more than over 100 scholarships every year, and has been doing so for the last 20 years. And also the Kabaka Education Fund, which built a hospital that attends to almost 300 patients every day with 99, it has 99 beds. So with all that, I think what I'm trying to say is that cultural institutions are relevant and have adapted to the changing times. They have to remain relevant to the people, but without losing the essence of Ubuntu or humanness, which is very much key to growing philanthropy in Africa. I think I'll stop there for the time. Thank you.
I'll now go to Queen Thandi, and really was The question really for me, again, is a follow-up question, is how do the traditional institutions, in your experience, how have they tackled social issues, especially around giving, around philanthropy, and around making sure that people are not left on their own in their time of need?
Thank you. I come from KZN. I'm Queen Thandi, wife to King Goodwill Zwelithini. Some of the delegates say we're asking whereabout is, where do you come from? I said KZN. They said, where is KZN? Then I had to say Durban. The minute I said Durban, then they understood. I feel that it is important to understand for us all here the role and the part that is played by traditional leadership. With the advent of politics, in a way, some of the powers of the traditional leadership has sort of like been dumped down. We in KZN or in South Africa, we've got the political leadership, and on the other hand, we've got the traditional leadership. And the layers of the traditional leadership has the kingship at the top, and then the chieftainship, and then the headman or the indunas. With regards to the tradition and the culture, we have been involved very much in philanthropy, which we refer to in Zulu as Ubuntu. I know in Sotho they said Butu. So it's an African proverb. We all aspire to doing just that. You know, looking after our people, looking after the needs of our people, identifying their needs and also the ills that are in our communities. So what the traditional leadership do, it uses its power, it uses its influence, because as a king or as a traditional leader, you are in leadership. For you to be a leader, you've got to be followed. And the followers will only follow you and respect you and take anything from you if you live with the people. And if you think for the people and do things with the people. In our case, we've lived with this all our lives since inception, where you find that we've got extended families as Africans. You live with your grandmothers, your uncles and all. You've got that special relationship of closeness. Your child is my child. When you've got somebody that comes into your area in the traditional settings, a lot is done to investigate about the background of the person that has just joined you. You want to know if he's there because he did not live where he was because of misbehavior. It could be any form of misbehavior. Could have been that maybe he was involved in some rape or he was stealing and some such things. So once that is ironed out, then that person, because usually when they come, they don't have anything. So the council of the king or of the traditional leadership will identify a place where this person is going to be accommodated, and will also make sure that this person is also given an area where he can start farming, so that as he settles amongst yourselves, he does not start stealing from yourselves. And again, the other thing that is still done, when a person comes in, you will know that because he's in your midst, like the Good Samaritans, you'll somehow will have to provide for that person, but for a short duration. Give him, you know, something like in other places you call it, it's like seed funding. So in our traditional setting, you give the person a land to grow whatever. You give the person the cattle, some few cattle, so that he can start milking. In Zulu, we call that izinkomo zamasisa. They are cattle that you borrow to that person. They stay with that person for as long as possible, while if that cattle gives birth, the offspring belongs to that person. And obviously that person will be quite comfortable and will be a member of the community. And then you'll introduce this person to everybody in the community so that they come to know that we've got this kind of a person. He's no stranger amongst us, and this person will also live with us in our tradition. All our beliefs and values, religion, whatever, will be known to this particular individual. So I think we have been practicing philanthropy all our lives.
And I'm just going to do a quick follow-up, Queen Sylvia, first to you to say, given what we've heard around generosity and philanthropy being with us all our lives, how do you think we can formalize and institutionalize these best practices and situate them in today's world?
When you talk about formalizing, well, I just go back to the fact that I think first and foremost, the traditional leaders or culture leaders have to be relevant to this day and age. But again, as I said, without losing their humanness. And I keep on saying that because you'll find that in light of all the different, or all the funding that has been placed into development programs, the expertise that goes in there and the time invested, we still have so many issues today. The education is still not where it's supposed to be, neither is the health and other aspects of life. And one may say that, okay, there's not enough funding, or they may give all kinds of excuses, but even with that little funding, we're still not there. And why is that? Why is that? And this is really the lack of Ubuntu. Now, for me, it's a golden thread that has to be woven into all the different aspects of our lives, whether it's a development program or a business project that you're doing. You cannot be successful. It will not be successful. However much money you put in or expertise that you put in. For me, that's really one of the key things that we have to look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question now is to Bolanle, and it's really around, for those of us who live in Nigeria, we've seen the tremendous work you've done with Terra Culture, focusing attention on the renaissance of the arts, whether it be literature, dance, theater, or the fine arts. But I just wanted you to focus a bit more on the purpose, the vision behind Terra Culture, and how, what role philanthropy, for instance, has played in your, in the development of the concept.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I started Terra Culture in 2004, and essentially I'd been working as an expatriate, as a lawyer with the United Nations. And I started it primarily because my children were not speaking Yoruba. And I felt that there was a problem there because a lot of my friends also had the same issues. Their children were not speaking our languages anymore. And having worked in different countries all over the world, I recognized that it was a peculiar problem with Africans. The Indians, the Chinese, the Europeans, everybody spoke their languages apart from us. So it's, again, another disruption of colonialism. It happened, but we have an opportunity to make a difference and ensure that we pass on our heritage and our languages to our children. So when I got back to Nigeria, I tried to work as a lawyer, even under Miss Oyebode, I failed. And then I decided to start a cultural outfit because I wanted to give back. I mean, essentially, philanthropy is not necessarily always about those who have the billions. You can give back in kind. And I think that a lot of us have a lot that we can give back to our society without having to be billionaires or millionaires or having the millionaires only sit up here. The reality is that I'm not a billionaire, and I decided to start an institution with very little money, and the desire was that I impact lives and I make a change. So what we started out with was a small institution with less than maybe 80 million naira then, and the company has now grown just using the arts and people's talent. And we've grown to a substantial bank balance business, basically because we just focused on culture. And we recognize that culture is a tool for social cohesion, integration, and it's one of those rare opportunities that we all have where we can make everybody come together. In Nigeria, as we all know, it's a very stratified society. There's a class structure in this society. And what we have done with our cultural center is that we've been able to make the presidents, the ministers, the actors all come together into one place and enjoy Nigerian culture. So what we've done over the years is, first, we focused on the visual arts. We started out as a small outfit, but today, from the tentative steps of 14 years ago, Nigerian art now is beginning to be seen on the international scene, having people like Bonhams what's the other one called now? Anyways, international auction houses coming into Lagos to look at our art. 14 years ago, nobody was interested, but it's because institutions like ours, My Dream, Nikkei Gallery, stuck to it, and we started exporting Nigerian art. In addition to that, we started focusing on theater, and from zero, a couple of years back, we started using theater as a tool for employment. So I often ask myself the question, if we hadn't built Terra Culture, as I'm sitting here today, there are close to 60, 70 people in Terra Culture dancing and getting ready for a performance. What were these young people doing prior to the establishment of Terra Culture? And you can see the multiplier effect, because that little seed, today we have Lagos State government also now planning to build, or they are building, using Terra Culture as the model and as the consultant. We're building 6 additional theaters in Lagos. So from zero, within a year, we're going to have 7 theaters. Because we recognize that, one, it keeps the youths off the streets. Second, we teach people new skills. So 4 years ago, we had very little people who could do technical work in the area of costuming, in the area of lighting, in the area of sound. Every single person that I've used for my development, and some of you were there yesterday, they were all Nigerians, young Nigerians that we started out with 4 or 5 years ago, and the acoustics in that hall is second to none. It's just as good as what you have anywhere else in the world. It is because some of us have taken a chance to invest in the younger generation, and therefore that is our own form of philanthropy. So we're giving back in our own small way, and what that is doing for us is we're spreading the word about Nigeria. When we had our play, the last play we had in London at the Shaw Theatre, we started exporting Nigerian plays. Prior to now, most people in this room would have heard of the South Africans taking their plays abroad. Nobody was hearing about Nigerians, yet we have such a rich and vibrant culture, but nobody was exporting or investing in that space. We take our plays to London, and all of a sudden you have everybody from the financial sector, from the legal sector, everybody coming to see what Nigeria has to offer in terms of costuming, in terms of music, in terms of performance. What we're doing is we're rebranding Nigeria where we do things like that. So the narrative about Nigeria being a 419 country, people with no talent, with this and that, we change it by taking our place to meet the world and showcasing the best of Nigeria. So doing this has started changing the narrative about who we are, how people perceive us. As a very small example, when we got to the Shaw Theatre the first time that I went there, they were very snooty. They were like, what are they bringing to us? Believe it or not, the show theater the second time around gave us a 50% discount, because when they saw the traffic of people that came in to see a Nigerian play, they had never had sold out shows at the show theater in over 10 years. We did it for them. So that tells you that we have a lot going on there for us, and that the ability of us to change the employment situation in Nigeria lies within the cultural heritage that we have in Nigeria. Apart from the places we can visit, apart from the talent that the young people have, we have so much that we can offer, and that is what we're doing at Terra Culture. And let me pass the mic so somebody else can speak, and then we can follow up on that later. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a question for all three panel members. I mean, traditional institutions in the olden days were the only real government that we had. Colonial governments, the only way that they could control things was to de-emphasize the traditional institutions, essentially play the divide and rule game. And so today, and I know that Queen Thandi has already made reference to it, today a lot of our traditional institutions have lost their real power and are seen only figuratively. And so my question is really, what can we do to bring back some of the prominence? You know, the history is there, but in your experience, what are the steps, what recommendations would you have for us to, again, focus on our ability, or the ability of traditional institutions to keep us grounded, but also to push the agenda around philanthropy? Queen Thandi.
Thank you. In KZN, the king is the custodian of the land for the people. So it is important to make sure that land is utilized to the benefit of the community. If they want to do business, it is available. In the past, they used to use the PTO system, but now, because it had its own problems, when the people want to get investors to come and do some business with in KZN, in the rural areas, it would be a problem, because the banks would not give the money since it was a PTO. So they then decided to use the lease system, so that with the lease system, the land can be utilized, investors can come, but they may not have the final ownership of the land of the people. So the people still have the land and the business thrives. Again, for the traditional leadership to be successful in philanthropy, it is to work hand in hand with the government. There is no way that there can be collaboration. We need each other. The government needs traditional leadership, because traditional leaders are the fathers of the people that vote for them. So it is important that, you know, they respect each other, that they support each other. So the government, through taxes, have got money for the projects or the programs that need to be run in the community. But then the traditional leadership can and does assist a lot in making sure that the programs run, because there is then some accountability of the political leaders to the traditional leadership, because they need to have their people having their problems solved. Fortunately, the king in KZN has got a part that he plays in the official opening of the parliament after the national parliament has opened. He is the first one who opens the parliament with all the parliamentarians, the politicians, etc., being there, and it is the time when he addressed them like the people, his people, since he does not belong to any party in particular. So it is easy if you are not belonging to any party and you are a king to be able to give advice, to give counseling. Hence, during that time, it is when he will speak out and state categorically where he feels things are not happening well with each department. If a certain department is doing well, again, he will express his views on that. And that does help in making sure that the people are the beneficiaries of the resources that are there in KZN. And again, there are some government, there are events. With the events, the cultural events that are so important, especially with tourism, like the wreath dance ceremony, the first fruit ceremony, and many others, like the Battle of San Juan commemoration. You find that the government, again, through the Department of Arts and Culture, works with the traditional leadership in making sure that that bears fruit and that becomes successful. There are many other instances that I can mention, but for now, just a few.
Thank you, Prince Sylvia.
Thank you very much. I think the greatest asset the traditional leaders have is the direct relationship that they have with the people. And this relationship, it enables development programs as well as business programs to be able to run smoothly. Now, at the Nnabareka Development Foundation, for example, we use the Culture Voice framework to devise development solutions. And one such solution is one that we call it Sakate, which is a children's program targeting children between the ages of 6 and 18. We studied it about 12 years ago, and it has benefited over 10,000 boys and girls. Now, what this does is really to instill values and positive culture practices. Values and practices of which will positively impact these boys and girls throughout their adult life. Hence, they'll be able to make the right decision when that time comes. And the reason we studied this was really to restore the community, to restore communities, whereby we have a lot of, there was an increase in moral decadence and also the falling away of social cohesion within our communities. And we felt that this program would really help a lot. And like I mentioned before, that in light of all the money and the expertise that is being pumped into the different programs, we still have problems and we still have issues. So this is one such program that's a solution, that where we feel that it is a prevention instead of waiting for this. And I think this was also, traditionally, it was done within our homes, but now you find that children are not really being taught what they're supposed to be taught as children because maybe the parents are very busy. So it's not an automatic thing. So we devised that program to enable, as a prevention to what may come. For example, kids dropping out of school and early pregnancies and all that. It kind of prepares a child to be able to make the right decision when that time comes. And Queen Thandi also mentioned about the partnership that the culture institutions or traditional institutions are good partners, and I think partners to both, to not only governments and development programs, but also to businesses as well. I don't think that the leaders in these different areas can be very effective without using traditional leaders. They are very well placed and well positioned to mobilize, trusted by the people because they're not looking for votes. So when, for example, the king goes out to speak, people listen to him, perhaps faster than they would listen to a politician. And so they are enablers. They're able to move and help also the development partners to be able to implement their projects. At times where they have to do based research studies in rural areas, there's the first people that they'll contact would be the culture leaders, because they know their people very well and understand them, and the people trust the traditional leaders.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just going to move on a bit with Bolanle, and given the different roles you've played both locally and taking shows abroad, I thought it was important to see how we could leverage the significant strength of Africans in the diaspora and their existing links to culture, and how we could actually get them to focus on philanthropy on the continent. And so I just wanted your views on how we could get that going.
So, I've often wondered why the French, the Germans, etc., all have cultural centers all over the world, apart from us Nigerians. And the reality is that we have Nigerians all over the world, and there's no cultural spaces for them to visit. So what is happening is that we have a complete lack of cultural connection between our kids and the Nigerian diaspora, as they call it, with Nigeria. So the first thing I would imagine is that private institutions or government would invest in this kind of initiative, whereby in London you have a Nigerian cultural center where you can send the children to learn Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, the same in America and what have you. So that's the first thing that would come to mind. Second is that those abroad are mostly disconnected culturally from the realities of Nigeria. And if you're a second generation or third generation, tough luck. There's just nowhere to learn anything about your culture. So I have cousins, everybody has somebody who is completely lost and don't know anything about Nigeria anymore, because there is no way or any opportunity for them to learn about Nigeria outside of Nigeria. So when we take our plays, the last time we were in London, I remember there was an ex-minister from Nigeria who came to me and said, Nigerian government cannot pay you enough for what you're doing for us right now. That the education and the awareness that you're raising about Nigeria is worth more than any Ministry of Information publicity. Because when you do this, this is a superb tool in public and cultural diplomacy for any country. When you travel abroad, when diplomats go abroad, the first thing that they're introduced to is the culture of the people. Nobody comes to talk to you about science when you go visiting a country. The first thing they bring are their dancers, their performers, because these are the people, they're the softer targets, the way to ease your way into any relationship. So those abroad, I would imagine some of them, instead of the very informal structures that we have now of people sending money home to do little bits and pieces here and there, they should form a bridge for us to connect with international foundations who could possibly want to invest in cultural spaces, or they as a collective can also find ways of supporting initiatives like Terra Culture in their respective villages or cities, even in Nigeria. There's a lot that we can do in terms of literature, in terms of arts, in terms of languages, in terms of performing arts. A lot needs to be done. Nothing is happening right now, and it's such a shame that we have so many of us out there and we have that critical mass. And that is why when we take little shows like ours abroad, and when you have Wizkid go to London at the Royal Albert Hall, or you have the comedians go abroad, they're filled out. We don't need to publicize that much. There is a hunger and there's a thirst for everything Nigerian abroad, and it cuts across, by the way. So when you think that it's just Nigerian, it is not true. When we did 2 years ago in London, the BBC came to cover the show. And the art correspondent asked me one question. What he said was, this is very unusual. We pay people, the Arts Council of England, we pay to have the diversity that you have in your audience. We ask our practitioners, how can we fill the hall with blacks, Asians, Caucasians? And you have come here and the hall is full of Nigerians, Europeans, Americans, people from the Caribbean. It tells you that our culture actually cuts across and that people are looking to see what we have to offer the world. And the sooner we cut onto this, the better for us, because there is money to be made from this. And the earlier all the philanthropists in this room begin to support me, the better for everyone.
I'm going to try and leave some time for questions, but I just wanted one last round of questions from each of our panel members, really to say what personal commitment they would make in driving and building strategic philanthropy in their communities. Because I think that sometimes we do the global picture, but we don't narrow down into what are the things that we can do better, what are the things that we will take back, and what are those messages that people sitting in the room can replicate in their own communities. So, Queen Thandi, if you could just tell us what's the commitment that you can make around strategic philanthropy that would allow for as a message to our audience.
Thank you. As a woman supporting the husband, who is a traditional leader, the king, it is important that one understands his role and is supportive. And again, to make sure that even the other wives to the chiefs are supported and they are empowered, so that they come to understand the role that we have to play, so that the people benefit from us being there. They must know that we are there for them. And again, having been in the health profession for plus minus 19 years, I contribute a lot. I work with the Department of Health in the programs that are run, like in helping with the scourge of HIV and AIDS, measles, rape, and many others. Even in the field of education, I work with those people, again, offering a lot of support, a lot of substance again, and again coming to the communities, promoting the youth especially, and helping the women so that they're gainfully employed. They trust us, they believe in us, that, because we go out and meet with the people, there's a fund of information that we've got that we can bring home to share with them, that can help them so that they're able to grow, develop, and become independent eventually, because at the moment, the rate of unemployment is rocketing high.
Thank you. I think I would continue doing what I've been doing, and using the cultural voice to mobilize, to create partnerships, effective partnerships. But I think most of all, perhaps to share with the rest of not just the country, but the continent, the programs that we're doing that have been very successful, and that is, for example, the children's program, and also tapping into the traditional concept of Ubuntu Bolanle. Now, both of these have been quite attractive enough to the point that international partners like UNDP, because initially we were doing this within the region and to an extent very attractive to the rest of the country. But our partners like UNDP would like us to take it further because it's a very important program. So I'd really like to share that with other countries, other people, so that they too can start similar programs, especially where the children are concerned, because we believe that if a child does not have strong foundation, then chances are the rest of her life or his life will have major problems. So it is a very important program. Prevention, 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 as opposed to waiting. So really using, I know I'm being questioned the time, using the culture voice, doing advocacy and creating formidable partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in our field, we continue to train, to transfer skills. We give a lot, we'll continue to give of what we have. It is my joy when I see people who came to us 3-4 years ago becoming movie stars. If you look at Arese Mokwaye, Adesua, Itomi, Patrick Dieboa, they all started from us. And we're changing the conversation about the art space. We keep giving public lectures to let people understand the economic value of the arts. And infrastructure is critical. We keep building. And when we look at what we're doing also in Lagos right now with art installations in public spaces, that is also another testament to the fact that the arts is growing in Nigeria, and people are noticing, and government is doing something about it. And also we just keep pushing the boundaries, and hopefully it makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have time for 1 or 2 questions before we wrap up. There are microphones roving around if anybody is...
We just wanted to know, it seems like nowadays, especially in Nigeria, the distinctions between traditional leaders and political leaders aren't as separate as it might seem. And we talked about having trust in traditional leaders because they're not vying for votes, or they don't have, personal agendas, but that's not necessarily true. I just wanted to know what can be done to bring back the trust in those traditional systems, or perhaps reverse the way that we have gone. Thank you.
I'm not sure that, I suspect that that's a peculiarly Nigerian problem. I get the impression that in Zululand and in Buganda, the traditional institutions remain respected, trusted, I think essentially it comes back to, I hate to blame colonials for current day problems, but I think that from the day that we decided that even though traditional institutions could make their rules, but every time they went against a government policy, they got deposed. We ended up with a situation where traditional leaders then had to toe a particular line. And rather unfortunately, as much as we continue to say that traditional rulers and institutions are custodians of our culture, they remain in position totally at the beck and call of political leaders. And so I suspect that a generality of the people that they govern see them no different from the political leadership of the state or of the federal government. And that's why I say it's, at least in Nigeria, it's a peculiarly Nigerian problem. But I agree with you that we do have a problem there. We have one more question in front, and that would be it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Fumi Lori. I'm a teacher,
and the founder of iRead Mobile Library. I'm just going to, before now, I've been working with children and helping them learn about culture. But with the conversation today, I'm saying I want to do more in that regard, create cultural centers and teach them. Some time ago, I was learning about how to even say library in Yoruba, and I learned that it is Ile Iyawe Kawe, or things like that. And then it's not common. The children don't want to even speak their local languages. I'd like to work with Terra Culture to ensure that our culture gets into communities.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we could just give the panel another round of applause for